This is Our Voice 360 podcast, our perspectives, our way. Hey, I'm your host, Chad Bumgarner, and Our Voice 360 is a podcast from our perspective, providing inspiration, business and leadership tips, Black history knowledge, sports, current news events, and self-help insight, along with other information to keep you in the know while you're on the go. Today, we'll kick off the show with a little motivation and inspiration from none other than Mike Brown. Right after that, we'll get some great business and leadership tips and insight from the leadership coach himself, me, Chad Bumgarner. Then we'll switch gears a bit and get educated on who we are when Mike Brown comes back to us with some Black history pearls of knowledge of self. Next up, we'll get our sports commentary and updates with our sports guru, Pete Hunt. Following Pete will be the brilliant and talented news reporter, Fentress Chestnut Fountain, with our current news events information. And rounding out the show will be our main man, Ivan Hunt, with his very own segment, Keep It Moving, showing us how to overcome any obstacles we face in order to gain success in life. Okay, are you ready? Let's go!
Welcome back to Our Voice 360. This your man, M. Brown. Hey, listen, everything that you do, always be conscious and mindful of your surroundings, because you never know who is looking at you for motivation. You might be the only Bible somebody knows. So keep that in mind as you go about your day. I want everybody to have an awesome day, man. You understand me? This is M. Brown, Our Voice 360. Y'all know how we get this thing in, baby. Each one teach one. Let's motivate. All right? Peace. Whether you go from state to state, coast to coast, there is no job too big, no project too small for Elect Graphics and Photography. If it's important to you, then it's important to us. Allow Elect Graphics and Photography to take care of all your graphic design, audio, and video needs. You can reach us at 828-855-3057. Thank you.
You're listening to the Our Voice 360 podcast, our perspectives from our way, keeping you in the know while you're on the go. Hey everyone, this is Chad Bumgarner with another edition of The Intentional Leader. How do leaders shift negative employee attitudes? I'm sure someone out there has wondered about this a time or two. An employee with negative behavior may not seem like a big deal, but negativity is contagious. Look, I realize that every day on the job may not be a great one, even in happy, healthy work environments. But occasionally, morale can slip, people can become overwhelmed, and things can seem a bit out of control, thus contributing to potential chaos and frustration. Regardless of the fact, negativity is non-productive and poisonous. Employees that take on a negative attitude don't realize that it can spread just like a virus, affecting many others around them. Now, this attitude can lead to negative conflict, and if it's not addressed immediately, it can start to erode the morale and productivity of its workers. It can also start to break down the existing workplace culture, and when this happens, it can be somewhat difficult to resolve and root out. Now, if you find yourself in this situation, pay close attention to the following techniques that you can implement in order to help restore order, bring back positive attitudes and vibes, and help the employees to refocus on things that they can control. The first step is detecting negativity. Now, sometimes it's easy to spot with a known vocal employee who is consistently talking negative about a workplace dynamic or problem. And other times, it may be a bit more of a challenge to see who is accountable for the general downturn in the environment's morale. Sometimes there are quote-unquote meetings after meetings or side talk with employees, if you know what I mean. But you know what? Ask for feedback from others to get a pulse of what exactly is causing the negative vibes that exist in the office. Are unclear objectives the source of the negativity? Maybe it's confusion about a goal or process or procedure. The second technique is combating negativity. Once you get to the root of the issue, create a plan to provide as much clarity as possible. If the issue is about priorities and expectations, reevaluate and generate a plan to plainly explain what the priorities are and what the expectations are, and ask for feedback to ensure that it is clearly understood going forward so that there are no more distractions and that there's no more confusion. Using the hands-off approach can leave people feeling out of the loop and undervalued, which can fuel the negative feelings, and you don't want that. So a great way to minimize the negativity is to provide feedback on any progress they make throughout the year, celebrating any and all positive steps that they make, both big and small. And the last technique is preventing negativity. Create and cultivate a culture of accountability. Now, this is the most important thing you can do to prevent negativity in the workplace as much as possible. Help your team take accountability of the things that they can control. Help them to stay positive and engaged in their work and focus on solutions, not problems. Negative attitudes have no place in this culture or any work culture for that matter. Guys, look, I know this is a touchy situation. It can be kind of, really sensitive depending on how severe it is. But you have to understand as leaders, when you see negative attitudes in an employee or employees, you have to root it out and nip it in the bud. You don't want it to fester and continue to grow in your environment, because it's going to make things tremendously worse the longer you wait it out and just think that it's going to go away on its own. You have to nip it in the bud and find solutions to prevent it as much as possible going forward. And folks, try to remember this. You can't expect quality results in places where you are poorly invested. So make sure you invest the time and the resources to root out the negative employee attitudes so that you can have a healthier work environment. Okay? All right. Well, that's it for me, guys. This has been another edition of The Intentional Leader. To find out more about me and what I do, please visit my website at www.chadbumgarner.co. You can also hit me on Twitter, as well as check out the video versions of these podcasts on YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in to Our Voice 360. And remember, great leadership equals great results. How are you leading? Attrition for companies has always been expensive, and the cost of losing good workers is rising. The Society for Human Resource Management predicts an overall turnover rate to be close to 19%. Here at the CDB Consulting Group, we can create a plan to help minimize the risk of losing good people, therefore keeping your company on the competitive edge. Contact us today at www.chadbumgarner.co or at 678-571-2773. Remember, great leadership equals great results. How are you leading?
Today we will speak on William Cooper Nell. William Cooper Nell was an abolitionist, author, and historian who wrote a notable work highlighting the achievements of Black people in the American Revolution. Nell was born December 16, 1816, in Boston, Massachusetts. His father was a prominent figure in the anti-slavery movement. An excellent student, Nell won honors for his academic marks, but was denied access to a dinner to celebrate with his other classmates due to his race. This motivated Nell to take a job as a waiter to attend that specific dinner, and to also make it his life's mission to combat segregation and racism on several levels. Inspired by abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison, Nell began working in the anti-slavery movement and was mentored by Garrison before working for the Liberator newspaper. Using the platform to advance his anti-slavery activism, Nell wrote several stories for the paper and other outlets, while also spearheading a movement to assist fugitive slaves from the South to navigate freedom to the North. Among his early acts of civil rights service, Nell fought and successfully achieved the desegregation of Boston's public school system. However, his shining jewel is considered his 1855 work, The Colored Patriots of the American Revolution, which he wrote in response to the Massachusetts state legislators' failure to erect a statue in honor of Crispus Attucks, the first casualty of the Boston Massacre. The work examined the lives and achievements of all black people Neal could find that had some manner of involvement in the American Revolution, which makes him a black history pioneer. According to some sources, noted historian Carter G. Woodson considered Neal the first black historian. He is also known as the first black federal employee as well. Neal passed in 1874 at the age of 57. I thank y'all once again for listening to Our Voice 360. Know yourself, know your worth. We're out. Peace.
You're listening to the Our Voice 360 podcast. Our perspectives, our way.
What's good, family, and welcome to the Sports Chronicles. I'm your host, Pete Hunt. Now that the NBA season is over and the favorite Golden State Warriors have won the NBA championship, it's now time for the NBA's second season, free agency. As the seconds ticked away in the NBA Finals, the LeBron James sweepstakes began. His decision where to play in itself was going to keep basketball fans intrigued this entire summer. But with the reports that the San Antonio Spurs superstar Kawhi Leonard wanting out of San Antonio, the basketball gods have given us another storyline we can sink our teeth into. Also impending free agents Chris Paul, Paul George, and DeMarcus Boogie Cousins will also be really interesting. But let's start with LeBron James. His options are limitless, because what team in the NBA, maybe other than the Golden State Warriors, would not want LeBron James on their ball club? Here are the three teams I could see LeBron going to if he decides to leave Cleveland. The first team is Houston. The reason I say Houston is because they are one superstar away from being a super team. That would guarantee that Chris Paul stays in Houston and would give Houston a legitimate chance of beating Golden State in the West. But I'm not sure how it would work with three ball-dominant superstars on the same team. But if I'm Coach Mike D'Antoni, that's a good problem to have. My second team is Boston. In my opinion, this is a can't-miss decision for LeBron. For this to happen, Boston would have to trade Kyrie Irving. I think General Manager Danny Ainge would do that in a heartbeat to get LeBron. Going to Boston would allow LeBron to play for one of the best basketball minds in Brad Stevens, but also play with a young and hungry group of players, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Terry Rozier, and Marcus Smart. He would also play with NBA veterans, Gordon Hayward, Marcus Morris, and Al Horford. If you put all three of those pieces together, that is a championship caliber team. And my third team is the LA Lakers. To me, this is the most intriguing because this decision will depend on how many other superstars would team up with LeBron. But first, let's get back to Kawhi Leonard. According to reports, he wants to play for the Lakers. If I'm Magic Johnson, I'm using every one of my available resources to get Kawhi because I think this will cause a domino effect, meaning if Kawhi is traded to the Lakers will offer the two max deals that they have available to LeBron James and Chris Paul. And that is a combination that will definitely threaten the Golden State Warriors. Also for LeBron, that LA move would be a great decision from a lifestyle and life after basketball perspective because of his interest in films, television, and other media outlets. So come on July 1st, so this summer of NBA free agency can get started. Thank you for listening to the Sports Chronicles exclusively on Our Voice 360.
The FPC channel, hosted by yours truly, Fentress Chestnut Fountain, can be seen on any streaming device on your televisions. You can even watch from your phones on any social media platform. News, weather, and entertainment featuring some of today's biggest celebrity interviews. You don't want to miss out? You could also have your own TV show produced by Fentress Productions and Communications LLC to expand your brand or business and get your content seen. Call 828-261-6122 or visit thefpcchannel.com for more information. You're listening to Our Voice 360, Our Perspectives, Our Way. It's Fintress, the host and founder of the FPC channel, also reporting news weeknights at 5:30 and 10 on WHKY News. Let's jump right in with my favorite segment, We Do It Big. A play chronicling the untold story of women and girls in the 1967 Detroit Rebellion is making its way to Chicago for special performances this month. In July 1967, Detroit residents in largely African-American neighborhoods squared off against the city's largely white police department in a 5-day confrontation that resulted in the deaths of 43 people. The clash, which saw thousands of buildings burned, followed a police raid on an after-hours nightclub. Residents said the rebellion was a response to an overzealous and racist police force. Afterlife, in honor of the city rising from the ashes, debuted in Detroit last year to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the rebellion from the perspectives of thousands of overlooked women and girls who rose up to burn their city down. It ran June 15th through 17th as part of Perform Midwest at Lynx Hall. Black women entrepreneurs in Alabama have developed a new app to realign the procurement process and empower economic growth. The Vivian's Door initiative, along with the support of the Mobile Area Chamber of Commerce, has launched a crowdfunding campaign for their Vivian's Door app and Indiegogo. The goal of the app, which currently has a functioning prototype, will provide comprehensive listings for all registered minority-owned businesses in the area, as well as access to scholarships, mentorship programs, networking opportunities, training, contract readiness plans, and other resources at both the community and government level. Famed black chef from New Orleans won a major restaurant industry award from the James Beard Foundation. New Orleans chef Nina Compton made history by becoming the first black woman to be designated as the best chef in the South at the 2018 James Beard Awards. The James Beard Foundation Awards are considered the Oscars of the culinary world. Only 5 black chefs have ever been a best chef finalist. This year's ceremony was the first to recognize black women. Black-owned hair care brand turns an ancient secret into a public success for women looking to grow their hair. People all over the world are raving about Ancient Secrets hair/body oil. The CEO and founder, Mika Royale, released her secret creation to the world in August of 2013. She swears that the ingredients came from a dream she had one night, made up of all natural ingredients. These ingredients have been used in ancient times by kings and queens of Egypt since 2000 BC. Therefore, the ingredients contain a calming and effective aromatherapy that have been known for its effectiveness and potency. They naturally nourish and condition the hair to give it a healthy and frizz-free texture, and within weeks of usage, many will notice hair growth combined with lustrous hair that is well-conditioned and healthy. Mika says she believes that this was truly a message from God, and it took her no time in turning this dream into reality. Now on to my next segment. I always like to end it off by taking a look at what we've accomplished in history. So taking a look back at what happened this week in history, starting on June 18, 1941, Philip Randolph forced President Roosevelt to issue an executive order banning racism and hiring in the military and defense industries. The union organizer and social activist was so frustrated with segregation in the U.S. military and pervasive discrimination in defense industries that prohibited blacks from benefiting from the skilled, well-paying jobs they provided that he planned to march on Washington to protest segregation. And then on June 18th, with a meeting with the president, the executive order was issued. On June 19, 1865, the first Juneteenth celebration was held. Juneteenth marks the day on which slaves in Texas first learned that slavery had been abolished. Although the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed and in effect since January 1, 1863, the news didn't reach the Lone Star State until June 19, 1865, but was still cause for a grand celebration. On June 20, 1967, Cassius Clay, also known to the world as Muhammad Ali, was convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison and fined $10,000 for violating selective service laws after he refused to be drafted into the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War. Lawyers for the world heavyweight champion, who was then 25 years old, who had become a Muslim in 1967, argued that as a minister of his faith, he was exempt. On June 21, 1990, Little Richard was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Widely regarded as the architect of rock and roll, Little Richard was honored with a star on the Walk of Fame. He was a pioneer at its craft and image. Little Richard is known for his unapologetic style of wild piano, pounding to hits like Tutti Frutti, Long Tall Sally, Jenny Jenny, and Good Golly Miss Molly. On June 22, 1963, Fingertips Part 2 became Stevie Wonder's first of 65 pop chart records. Through 2002, Stevie Wonder's Harmonica Freestyle at the Regal Theater in Chicago, Fingertips Part 2 was the first live recording to ever reach #1. On June 22, 1963, the song became the 13-year-old's first of 65 pop chart records through 2002. Wonder recorded several hit songs over the next decade, including Living in the City, Boogie on Reggae Women, and Isn't She Lovely. Then in 1980, Wonder recorded I Just Called call to say I love you in ebony and ivory. And that is the Black History Rundown and also the news segment for today. I'm Fentress Fountain. Be sure to keep on listening because up next we have more here on Our Voice 360. You're listening to Our Voice 360, our perspectives, our way.
You're listening to the Our Voice 360 podcast, our perspectives from our way, keeping you in the know while you're on the go.
Hey, this is me, Ivan Hunt, coming live from Miami, Florida. This is a talk radio show called Keep It Moving. And what is Keep It Moving all about? Keep It Moving is all about inspiring, motivating, encouraging, and empowering people to take ownership over their life so they can regain control of their life, so they can live a life that's full of purpose, passion, and meaning. My guest today is no different. His name is Amari Gonzalez Hernandez.
Mm-hmm. Haywood, yeah.
Haywood, yeah, sorry. And it's funny, when I saw Haywood, I should know that because my great granddad is named Haywood. His name is Haywood Hunt. You know, he passed obviously years and years ago. So when I saw the name Haywood, I was like, oh man, wow. You know, that's kind of cool. But today my guest is Amari. And Amari's a young, inspiring fellow, man. I think he's going to really provide a lot of information for business owners who are really trying to establish themselves on social media and also maybe even in their websites on how to get picked up, you know, through the various search engines. I know I've had that challenge, you know, trying to jump off into my own. So without further ado, Amari, how you doing today, man?
No, I'm doing good. How you doing today?
Good. Now let our listeners know and viewers know, where exactly are you coming from?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm all the way in Salem, Mass. Represent where the witch trials happened, not too far from here.
Okay.
That's most famously known for and stuff. Right outside of Boston, so that's kind of the biggest landmark to kind of look for. So
y'all had a rough couple weeks, I guess, after the Cavs series, huh?
Yeah, really tough one, but I think we played really good, seeing as the pieces we had together for this year. So.
Yeah, good team, man. And you know, I agree. I think y'all overachieved. Not overachieved. I think you were exactly where you were supposed to be, and I think, you know, you probably should have won. But hey, LeBron is who LeBron is. So, you know, he was down here for a little bit, so I kind of know the frustration of having to deal with LeBron James. So without further ado, man, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, definitely. So I just recently graduated college and stuff too, and I'm just figuring out kind of life. So I got my first job as a sales development representative. So I'll be working in the center of Boston. My background's kind of been in marketing and social media, but I decided to kind of take the sales route so I could see both sides of the spectrum, especially because marketing and sales have this kind of hate for each other.
Right.
So having experience in both would be great to kind of see things from another point of view.
So tell me, what do you see a lot of people, where do the struggles come from when it comes to social media and trying to market themselves on social media? What are some of the challenges that you find people face with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think some of the big challenges that people face is not really knowing, you know, what their mission is or what their end goal is before they really kind of go into it. I think a lot of people go into a lot of stuff and see that other people have Instagram pages, YouTube channels and stuff, and instantly assume that's the right channel. But depending on the kind of message that you want to give out and who your target audience is will depend on the platform you use. And it's perfectly fine, you know, to be really kind of big on Twitter or something if that's where most of your customers are, and kind of ignore Facebook in that sense. And I feel like a lot of people try to attack too many different ones without really having an end goal or strategy. And it's just this obsession with kind of using all these different platforms and stuff and just seeing everyone else doing it.
Right. You know, we were talking offline before, you know, the show started, and I told you that I resigned from my corporate career, and I resigned a little bit over almost a year and a half ago. And all I kept hearing was social media. You know, you got to have a Facebook page. You got to start a Facebook group, you know, and then you got to be on Instagram. Then you got to be on Twitter. And then you got to be on Snapchat and LinkedIn. And I'm like, oh my God, like, man, what, bro? You know, I never was on Facebook to begin with. You know, I was very careful about what I would post on Facebook for that matter. So how do you help people define or, you know, which approach or which platform they should really target?
Definitely. I think it really stems from who their target audience is. So a lot of businesses that do business with young professionals, I would say Instagram and Snapchat are the kind of way to go, where you're able to show, especially something like a life coach, where people can kind of see where you live, what you kind of go about your daily business, and create that personal attachment. I think Facebook's better for just broadcasting your words out there. And I love to run Facebook ads because they're so specific on, so I can look up people in a specific area, people with certain interests that they like on that nature. Twitter is more just quick, catchy kind of, and then a link into a website, whereas Facebook or Snapchat can actually store that video content for people to kind of look into, which I think is huge. So it really kind of depends on your persona too. And as you know, a lot of old heads kind of more prefer Facebook and things of that nature, while a lot of young kids.
What are you saying? What are you saying? I'm not sure where you're going with that statement. Nah, I'm joking.
But, you know, the young ones do use Facebook too. But Facebook, I think, is the greatest thing for kind of small businesses, especially kind of stemmed around like landscaping, anything that's kind of really service-based. I think Facebook's a great place. You kind of see that with Facebook Marketplace. With groups and stuff too. A lot of them just have to be careful because there's this huge thing about creating like free Facebook pages and stuff. And I think that doing that, you can kind of get lost in the shuffle of who's an actual customer, who's, you know, just being nosy, trying to promote their own stuff.
Right.
But really doing things like creating like a paid group or just one where all your customers go to, where they can kind of answer each other's questions. And when you have certain things like that, then you would see Facebook's more appropriate than say Twitter or YouTube or something of that nature.
Now, the one platform I've always struggled with is Twitter. I cannot figure out Twitter for nothing in the world. And I've actually tried it several times and actually moved away from it. And I think initially when I started this, you know, I was kind of geared in on Facebook and Instagram. And what I found as that it was really my temperament, right? You know, I'm a little bit more reserved. I'm very transparent in videos and so forth. But my life as a whole doesn't fit that Facebook model, and it really doesn't fit that Instagram. I don't have time to take a picture of what I'm eating every day and posting on Facebook or posting on Instagram. But what I found is I've gotten a lot better response from LinkedIn. I think that's actually where you and I linked up. You know, no pun intended. But you know, how do you help your clients then to identify who their real niche audience is, and then which platform better aligns with what it is they're trying, you know, who it is they're trying to attract?
Yeah, definitely. It really stems from going down to like personal values and really creating like a buyer persona, which is literally sitting down and saying, all right, let's take a look into who our average customer is in their life. And obviously not boxing it into one, but saying, you know, this person is 40 years old. He works 9 to 5. So he probably wants to listen to a podcast on his way to work or on his way home in his drive or something too. Something of that nature. And then sitting down and thinking of, okay, what industry are they in? And how does that industry communicate? There's a huge revolution towards like Slack and these kind of things where you can quickly share and kind of update things. So I think it really stems down to like what their personal preferences are. And realistically, once you really sit down and identify like the traits of the person, what time they have during the day, you can also do social media research just to see what kind of common trends a lot of people in that have. And a lot of it's just overall, I think, creativity too. So just sitting down but once you're really able to create that persona, then I think you're able to understand, like if you were saying, okay, I'm a young college student, you know, I'm 22 years old. You know, I watch YouTube instead of television. You know, I travel to and from work and it's about a half an hour trip. Then you can say, all right, we have a podcast. When you're sitting down at home, you might want to watch a YouTube video and stuff of that nature. But I think a lot of companies really struggle to really, really identify that persona before they start, because there's this whole trend that like people, you know, especially a lot of my friends that I help say, who's your target market? They say everybody. And I'm like, well, it's not everybody. You know,
Yeah,
you know,
that ain't work.
Yes. You know, and you know, and it really identifies, like in life coaching, it's great to be able to say like, oh, I want to help everybody, but who's at the point in life where they're really willing to make the change, where they can see the impact? You know, you see a lot of people who get onto products or whatever. A year later, they're like, oh, I didn't like the product. And it's like, they didn't even know about all the features it had and they never utilized all that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Especially Facebook, people are like, oh my God, like it just seems like you created a page, I got 100 followers. And I'm like, well, did you ever stem into using ads to kind of target? Did you ever do any kind of campaigns and stuff? And it's not until then that they realize, oh, I want to do this campaign, but I don't know who to target. And I say, why? You can't target everybody. Is that why? So that's
true.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that's true. And I know going through my coaching program, my certification, right? One of the things they kept saying is, you know, what is your niche? Find your niche, narrow your niche down, be as concise as you possibly can be. And it really probably took me well over a year before, and when I say my niche, I'm also using elevator pitch interchangeably in this sense, right? And my niche / elevator pitch has become, I transform employees of life into CEOs over their lives. And so you ask a great question, you know, well, like, who is that? You know, who is that person? What do they look like? Well, they kind of look, to me, I've had to go back and kind of redefine and say, okay, what does that person look like? Initially, my niche was geared more towards men and helping men with emotional intelligence and helping men work through issues. But that's a very difficult market to tap into. I can't imagine why, right? So tell me a little bit about, what's the term? Not demographics, but psychographics. Have you heard that term, psychographics?
Yeah, I've heard it, kind of glimpsed over it, but it mainly is, I think it's centered around like behaviors of certain people, and kind of attitudes that they have. So that's a huge thing, right? So in the past, I interned for a dude who does this emotional intelligence assessments and things of that nature too. Right. The target market was mostly men's, you know how that kind of is. As he found, a lot of his research showed that women are more emotionally intelligent in assessments and that things. But us men are just better. I'm just kidding. But
you're not married.
Yeah, not at all. So that's probably why I can say these things. Might have to clip them out. But yeah, and it was huge. It's like, what's the attitudes that these people have? And it's kind of a lot of the dudes that we were doing, it was family-owned businesses. So it was a father who was trying to pass the business on to a son. And what was the certain attitudes that the son had, you know, versus what the father had. The father had concern, you know, he wants to pass this down. This has been in the family for generations and stuff. The son's attitude is like, oh, it doesn't really matter how good a leader I am because dad's just going to pass the business on to me regardless. So working with that kind of attitude, it allows you to create a marketing statement where you can be like, are you a father of a who runs a family-owned business getting ready to pass it down, but your sons just don't know enough about leadership where you feel comfortable? Learn more about this learn more through this free consultation where we can talk about those things rather than just saying free consultation talking about emotional intelligence for your company. One is really logically based and the other one really appeals to the emotions, and selling is all about that emotion. So when you're able to target that, people really feel they understand. And especially nowadays, you know, you got a company that literally does every single thing you can imagine. You know, you're on an online marketplace where there's thousands of people competing. So when you're going after it from that sense of logically based, that's what everyone's saying. And you really have to find a way to stem in that emotion that really shows. And that's why when you have that persona, you really understand where his mindset is. And then how can you fix the problem rather than trying to like create a problem to fix for him before you kind of ask. And I see a lot of people, they kind of bring out these companies and stuff. They never spend the time to sit down with their customers and see what they want. It's let me create this platform, then push it on to everybody else. Versus like, let me talk to everybody else about what kind of platform we should create and then create it, you know, and there's ways to test it, you know, doing, you know, A/B split tests and email marketing and all that complicated stuff. It isn't that bad, but once you're able to identify who it is you're helping, then you can help them rather than trying to help people before you know who you're helping.
I know when I first started out, you know, I was doing a lot of Facebook ads, but really didn't know what I was doing. So obviously I was just throwing money away. And I went to a Les Brown seminar not too long ago, and I actually joined this program called Antonio Smith Jr. Business University, and he's one of the, you know, leaders in Les Brown's institute. and he mentioned, psychographics and how to really start target marketing even on Facebook. And I just tested it out. I've only done it like maybe once, maybe twice, but we're just kind of picking things out at random, even though in my mind, so someone like me, right? I'm coach, I'm an entrepreneur, I understand numbers, but I understand who I want to coach. But how do, like you said, how do you get that message out? How do you create that marketing strategy, that marketing theme, so when I hit send, right, that it automatically appeals to who I'm looking for or who may be looking for me? How do I know the difference even? That's a good question too. Now I think about it. I don't know if I'm making sense, but, I'm just asking, so for someone like me, if I'm your client and I say, okay, I know that I want to work with, typically men and women for that matter, in the 35 to 55 range who are encountering what I call not a midlife crisis, but a midlife awakening or midlife awareness. They realize, okay, I've done all these things. I did everything I was supposed to do, got my degree, got a good job, got married, got kids. Now what? Life sucks. This is not what I thought it was going to be. How do I communicate that message to them?
Yeah, definitely. What kind of message, so I know I'm answering the right question?
Good question. The message of, stop being an employee of life. Stop letting life tell you what you have to do, but instead take ownership over your life and start telling life what life's going to do for you. In other words, if you're tired of your career, right, what steps do you need to take to transition out of your career into doing something that you're more fulfilled in, and that possibly still meets that financial obligation or that financial, stability that you had in your corporate career? Does that make sense? Or help me out?
Yeah, definitely. And it's
okay.
It's a really good question too, because right there, I think you have $1 billion industry, man.
Well, thank you. That's
yeah, you're welcome. So there's definitely potential.
Sure.
Yes. I think the main thing is to really, go to a couple of those people who are in those situations and really sit down and listen. I know that it gets harder and harder to kind of change as you get older. And, they say like your brain fully develops by 25, 26. And even a lot about it, I think being so young, it's like, if I wanted to go move to San Francisco, I could do that versus, 10 years down the road, I got a kid who gets accommodated to the system and stuff. So I think the only real way to do that is to really sit down and listen to them and see where their concerns are. You might be in a similar life situation yourself, which kind of helps, but, and really think about the process of what made you change. What was, a lot of people journal, what was the kind of experiences they had leading up to when they thought, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur. And I think it's one thing it's really tough because, you see it, you see how much potential these people have and it's right in front of their face, but it's just, it's stuck behind this, safety, security and stuff. But it's a constant reinforcing message, and I think it takes time, when a lot of people realize, it's not until they realize that they start working that, wow, this really isn't as much money as I thought it was, especially me thinking about, moving into Boston, the city, you're like, oh, I got a great city job, I'm going to be fine, until you realize life's expensive, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That nature. But I think the main thing is to just be a constant reinforcing voice and really kind of say, get those testimonials from people who've been in similar situations to them and being able to say this was a single mother, who had a child and was able to create her own business part-time, and then really stemming into that emotion. Why is that important? Well, now her kid gets out at 2:00 and it's not her constantly asking her boss, can I go home early to pick up the kid from daycare and all this stuff. Now she has the freedom to do that. And I think once you kind of stem into those things and kind of target your market, it's really important. And a lot of it stems from, just even breaking it down a little bit more into separate niches, like, life coaching for single mothers with children who want to start a business, then having that segment and kind of going at them differently than life coaching for fathers, who are married, but, the wife stay at home and they want to be able to make sure they have enough income.
Right.
And really kind of stemming into them and then interviewing those people and seeing like, one is seeing the single father who's, still working 9 to 5 and doing all that stuff. And then seeing one who was able to be an entrepreneur and kind of filling in what the process was like for transformations, just like you make transformations and stuff too. Because that's huge too. And I think that it's really tough because even in the world of, saying everything's great and there's so much that lies and hopes for you, which just, people don't see it. And it's kind of tough to get into that point.
And you're very insightful with that. I've actually been a single dad.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually had to raise both my boys for, a period of time. And I had to get up in the morning. I had to get them dressed. I had to get them breakfast fed. I had to get them to school. And they went to school in 2 different counties. I just happened to work kind of right in the middle of both of them. Get off work. I had to leave at a certain time so I could pick the little one up before 6, before the after school care program closed. And then had to drive down to Dade County because my other one was playing football. And then didn't get home till 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. Now I got homework to do. Now I got to get them cooked. Now I got to get them, ready for bed and put them in bed. And then by that time, it's my time. It's like, whoa, I'm exhausted, and then actually go through a 4-year custody battle some years down the road later and actually win majority time share of my boys. So, just the analogy that you use, I can relate to. And I think that's one of the things that maybe I could probably do a better job is bridging that gap. Intuitively and intellectually, I know who it is and what it is, right? But I don't know if I have that marketing capability, right? To be able to articulate that. And, because the communicator is only as good as the listener can, formulate whatever is being said. And I've listened to you several times and you've used the word listen. What is some of the tools that you use to be a better listener?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a ton of tactics and stuff too. And, it's eye contact, it's good body posture, it's engagement. But I think a lot of people are like, what does it take to be a good listener? And I'm like, if you were just listening, you don't need a tool, all you got to do is just, focus on that stuff. And I know it's tough too, especially in this day and age, because there's so many. I was reading something that said the average boss gets like interrupted every 3 minutes at work, whether it's an email or phone call, someone coming in and stuff too. But I really think taking that time to, put yourself in a situation where you're one-on-one with someone, you're away from distractions and stuff too, is really important too, because I've had a lot of meetings with friends and stuff too, and clients as well, where, you spend 30 minutes just, talking about, stuff, which is great, but it's like, they're on the clock, you want to get something from it. In that sense. But I think it's really understanding that everyone has like their own different life. And, you take you and your brother, right? And you grew up with the same mother, the same family, went to the same school and stuff. But there's so many hours of the day where they're going out having completely different experiences that you never would have even imagined. You know what I'm saying? I look in the background right here and I'm like, oh, beautiful Miami, man. How's that? Like, you know what I'm saying? And just these whole experiences that people have had that you've never gotten to. And the only way to understand those is to listen. And, there's the classic, you got one mouth and 2 ears, his mother would always used to say and stuff too.
Right.
But I think it really, I think one thing people underestimate is that listening takes effort. It's not like, it's active listening. It's not passive listening. Passive listening is like someone talking while you're texting and stuff and all that. But really being active is just all about being in the moment in terms of techniques. I think it's just, putting yourself in a good, getting pumped up, getting excited, kind of doing whatever you do, keeping that eye contact, but then also just appreciating and being empathetic of the person across from you that's got to experience all this stuff that you never get to see until VR and all that stuff allows you to go anywhere in the world. But until then,
Right. But that's true. That's
Yeah.
true. And it all starts with imagination to begin with, as far as the VR and stuff. Amari, I'm really impressed with you clearly, I think you found your passion. I think you have found your niche in life. And I think whatever direction you choose to go in, you're going to be successful. What are if there is 3 things that you could offer, to close out with, to help some of the listeners, a young entrepreneur or somebody who's trying to start a speaking business or whatever type of business, and they're going to really start their market. What are 3 tips or 3 questions that they can ask themselves you think would really get them moving in the right direction?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the first one is, who am I surrounding myself with? Surrounding yourself with really good people inspired to do great things. If you have, several friends making $10,000 a month, it's only a matter of time before you're making that amount, because in order to fit in, you got to be with them.
Right.
I think the other great question is, why am I doing it in the first place? That's huge too, because I'm a huge proponent of reverse thinking. So thinking, what's the end goal, and then kind of working your way backwards to the steps you need to achieve. But it's because it's really hard to set goals like, oh, I want to make, $4,000 a month, if you don't really know why you want to, because it's great when everything's easy, but when everything gets tough and you start questioning yourself, if you don't have that answer for why, you're just not going to make it. It won't be authentic enough. You're going to have no reason. There's going to be some nights where it's 10 o'clock and you want to go to sleep, but you got to put in another 2 or 3 hours of work. And when you know why, you just do it. I used to set up events and stuff too. And, there would be some days where it's just cool. Some days where it's like you got 6 hours with 12 hours of setups, it seems like. And, it'd get to like 9 or 10 o'clock and, eventually be 12. And I'd be like, man, I'm still tired. But really just whatever it takes, putting that good music on, all of a sudden that second wave hits. And I think that's something that I really admire about a lot of entrepreneurs, is really when that first wave, there's all those people who say, all right, I'm done. But when that next effort comes in, there's this sudden push. It's like you start giving all you had, and all of a sudden you realize that like what you were doing before was only 10 or 20%, and all of a sudden it's like, all right, let's get this done.
Yeah.
And, I'm a big believer in, there's the concept of, when you're wrestling a bear, you don't quit when you're tired, you quit when the bear's tired,
Yeah.
So that's a huge thing too. And third, I want to get your opinion for the third question.
Uh-oh. Caught me off guard. Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. Go ahead. What is it? What do you want? I'll tell you.
So I guess, what's your answer to the question? So what is it that you believe, the questions they should ask themselves?
I like where you went. Who do you surround yourself with? Right. So one of the things that I say about, becoming a CEO over your life, ultimately you're in charge, right? But a CEO, there's different facets to an organization. You got the chief operating officer, you got chief financial officer, you got the chief marketing officer, you got the chief, information officer. I mean, you got all kind of chiefs and all kind of officers with all kind of second word descriptions and adjectives of whatever it is they need to run. But ultimately, that CEO still has a board of directors that they have to report to. And I think that board of directors is really critical. And that board of directors is your belief system, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Those you surround yourself with, those are your C-suite. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's your council. Your C-suite is your council, or the C-suite is your group, your inner circle. But mm-hmm. that board of directors is imperative, that you have to have that strong board of directors. And in my case, it's my belief system. It's the thing that I believe in, because that's where I go seek my guidance. That's where I go seek my counsel. That's where I go seek my wisdom. That's where I get answers to my questions, that innately I'm supposed to know, so I can pass that information down to my C-suite. I think the other one is, I think you're right. Why am I doing this? I coach because I love people. Mm-hmm. I love helping people. I love watching people succeed. I love watching people be successful. And more importantly, I love knowing that, I had something to do with it. Selfish, right?
Yes.
It is. But I get such a warm feeling. To me, it's a very intimate interaction that takes place when I'm coaching a client and I just see their light, the light bulb goes off in their head and they're like, oh man, I never thought of it that way. See, that's something, that's just a split second interaction that they'll never share with anybody else. That it was, that moment in time was just with you. and you had something to do with changing their life in that split second. And to me, that's powerful. That's impactful. You know, that's something that creates a legacy. So if we're going to use the term CEO and deal with a corporation and realize that a corporation lives long past the CEO does, right? So that's your legacy. You created that change for somebody's life. That's your legacy. And I think the third question is, and to kind of go back to the second question as to why, because you're right. When you start off your own business and you become an entrepreneur and you jump out on a leap of faith, you leave that security of that corporate job, that, you know, you have the, you know, the health plan, you have the retirement accounts, you know, you have all these things, and all of a sudden you jump and it's gone. It's scary. It is absolutely one of the most petrifying things I've ever experienced so far in my life. And I've done a lot of crazy stuff in my life, but nothing has challenged me more to this point than to have to be dependent upon my wife in areas where I used to wouldn't be dependent. Having to reach out to people and ask for guidance and ask for wisdom. You know, I don't know about marketing, but Amira does, right? And so I have to humble myself to somebody who's probably 20 years my junior, but who clearly knows more about it than I do, because how else am I going to learn? So even though that initial wave that you talk about, which really clears out the path for everybody else, and then that second wave still kind of weeds out those pretenders who have a little bit of fortitude. You know, maybe they had a little bit of capital to sustain past that first wave, and then the second wave comes and it wipes out the rest of the capital, and then that third wave comes. And I think that third wave is where you're forged in the fires. You know, a champion is forged in defeat. Gold is forged through heat, right? You know, I always tell my son, you know, either you're going to be a piece of coal or you're going to be a diamond, right? Pressure, you know, pressure compounded on that coal, it's either going to turn it to dust or you're going to be able to survive that pressure. And if you can survive that pressure, you're going to turn out to be a beautiful diamond and you're going to shine. And so if you could really handle that pressure and realize that at the end, it's going to crush some and it's going to turn to coal and or dust and it's just going to go back to the earth. But then there's those rare few gems who turn out to be big diamonds and they shine. And that's what separates those who do versus those who don't. Can you handle the pressure? And that's what you get paid for in this world. You don't get paid for what you know. Innately, everybody gets to a spot where they kind of know about the same things, particularly in corporate. And even in the entrepreneur world, you know, there's only so many experts, there's only so many topics, but who can handle the pressure? You get paid for how much stress you can handle. That's what separates people. And then the other one is, man, what are your three values? What are your core values? And if you understand, like you talked about earlier about your personal values, you know, who are you? And then that's how you kind of start niching your market. I didn't mean to take this thing over, but you just kind of got me going. That's a great question. You got me going. But, you know, but that core value, you know, me, my three core values is family, service, and money. Well, my family comes first before anything. And that was part of the reason why I made my decision to leave my job. The second is service. I love serving people. I love helping people, you know, and I've kind of already mentioned that. Well, if I don't have money, I can't take care of my family. I can't serve people. Yeah. So that's where money comes from, you know, and I'm learning and I've had to redefine what money means to me. Right. Because yeah. I've gone from different places of scarcity to abundance and scarcity to abundance. So I've had to redefine as I've gotten older what money really means to me. So I didn't mean to take I didn't mean to give a long-winded answer on that question, but it's a great question. And any other questions you want to ask me while we're at it? You can interview me now. How about that?
I know. No, it's just great to kind of get to learn and do all this stuff. But I don't know. What do you do for fun down there in Miami? Because it looked really nice and it kind of rainy up here and stuff. So,
you know, yes, my son plays basketball. So he's playing AAU basketball. So I'm spending a lot of time with him going to different tournaments. We were in Orlando last weekend. We're going to Mississippi in 2 weeks. He had a tournament this past weekend. When I got back from the tournament, my wife and my daughter were at the pool. I stay right here on the marina, so I get to watch the boats come in and out. You know, really, I just spend a lot of time with my wife. You know, my wife is my best friend. And so she and I spend a lot of time together. And whenever we're together, it's fun. So that's what I do for fun. Now, when I was your age, my answer would be a lot different. But I'm smarter and wiser now. I won't incriminate myself. Amari, young man, you are a remarkable fella. And you are going to go, I said it earlier and I mean it, you're going to go big places. And if there's ever anything I could do for you, do not hesitate to reach out to me. And, you know, ladies and gentlemen, I'm kind of wrapping the show up with Amari. I enjoyed this interview. I love your passion. I love your fire. I love your enthusiasm. I love your knowledge for your subject and your topic. I love how intuitively you are. You're active listening, as you mentioned. And I really am impressed with you. I think you're going to go far. So without further ado, hey, this is me, Ivan Hunt. I'm the host of the talk radio show called Keep It Moving, but this is the video series. Hey, if you're ever in Miami, holler at me. You can find me at ivanhunt.com or email me at coach@ivanhunt.com. Peace.
Well, folks, that's it for this week. I'm your host, Chad Bumgarner. I want to give a shout out to my Our Voice 360 team, Mike Brown, Pete Hunt, Fentress Fountain, and Ivan Hunt. As always, thanks for tuning in to Our Voice 360, our perspectives, our way, keeping you in the know while you're on the go. See you next week.